Okay, we are officially recording. Thank you for reminding me, for somebody reminding me. So, like I was saying, this is the kickoff for Dyslexia Awareness Month. Be sure to come to Perimeter Mall on October 21st for the Dyslexia Dash. There's going to be a 5K run for adults, a 1-mile run for kids under 10, Kona Ice, Kids Zone, and our very own Ryan Sias is going to be there. So we'll put the link to that in the chat. And I also want to tell you that throughout the month of October, we're going to be running a contest. We're going to be doing it with the Oregon branch of IDA, and we'll post more details on it. But the gist is that you're going to paint a rock, get super creative. It's going to be something to do with dyslexia, and you're going to email us where you're from and a photo of the rock and a comment about what you've painted on the rock and why. And we're going to post these on the website, on social media. And the goal is really just to spread awareness of dyslexia throughout the month. So enough about that. I want to welcome our amazing guest, Ryan Sias. And he is here to help us. He is an artist. And I don't know how many of you have been to his website, but it's really amazing what he's done. Not only is he dyslexic himself, and he'll tell us about that tonight, but he's been working for years and years and years to make kids laugh through all of his creative outlets. He has worked on the Robots movie. He has worked with Sesame Street. He has worked on cartoons and books and comic books, and he's just this incredible artist. And I think that's really awesome. And we wanted to have our teens ask him some questions. So is that good with you, Ryan? Are you ready for some questions? We're going to throw them at you.
I'm ready, man. I'm ready to go.
Fantastic. Well, Bess had our first question, and I'm going to let her ask that. Here we go.
Hi.
Hey.
So pardon me. This question is, when you worked for the Sesame Street, did you meet any of the characters, like Cookie Monster or some of those characters?
Yeah, so it was pretty cool. What's interesting is Sesame Street has an office in Manhattan, and then where they shoot Sesame Street is out in Queens, out of the studio out in Queens. So when I actually went to Sesame Street, I found it and I went in there and I had to show ID and everything. And while I was on Sesame Street, they were shooting some bit with Grover and Telly. And so I got to meet Grover and Telly. I'm actually friends with some puppeteers on Sesame Street now in life, which is pretty crazy. So I've met Grover in character. I've seen Big Bird's costume, and I've seen Snuffy, and I've worked with the voice talent that does Cookie Monster. I worked with him just recording his voice in a booth, right? So he didn't have the puppet. And I've worked with Abby's voice person also. So it's pretty fun. It's really weird because you guys know enough to know the puppet's kind of right here and the person's right here, but you totally just look at Grover, or whoever it is the whole time. So it was really fun. It was really cool. I'll tell you a short story that ties into this. When I was small, 6 or 7, small, I actually wanted to run away to Sesame Street. And I actually packed a lunch and I walked down to the end of the block, and then I sat on the end of the block. Of course, I had nowhere to go. I didn't know anything. So then I think I eventually went home. But then I randomly, when I moved to New York after college, I randomly ended up in Sesame Street's neighborhood, just by pure randomness. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, so I've met a couple of them over the years, which is super fun.
Is anybody else singing the song? Can you tell me how to get to Sesame Street right now in their head? Okay, thank you. I thought it was just
exactly. The songs are good. And I'll say, I know you're all too old, but if you watch Sesame Street at all recently, they have a new character called Ji-young, which is the first Korean puppet. And I'm friends with her. I was friends with her before she ever did puppets. So it's extra crazy that she's now on Sesame Street. So it's pretty wild. So I always wanted to go to Sesame Street. So I went when I was a kid, and that's my long-winded story of, yes, I've met Grover.
All right, very cool. Sion, if you can unmute yourself. Sion has a question for you.
All right, I'm ready.
I. Now, I like video games because I play Fortnite.
Nice.
Fortnite. So, what is it like to make a video game?
I will tell you that it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun. You know, you get to. I'm gonna say kind of two things. One, it's super fun because you're working on a video game, right? And you get to like do the artwork and you get to like play test the game and see when things don't work. The other part of it is it actually just becomes like work, right? And so like to do a video game takes like years. And so it's every day, it's kind of like one process after another. It's like today, you know, the character's walk cycle is kind of weird. So you got to work on that. And then the next day, you got to like get the voice talent to do something. The next day, the coding, the character is like walking through walls or not catching the thing they're supposed to catch. You know, it becomes a job, though it's super cool job. So it's fun. You know, it's a lot of tech. Everyone you're around likes to play video games. If you're working in, I've never worked in like a big video game place, but I've been to parties at the guys that do Doom and stuff. They have like I've been to big parties of big video game companies and they're fun and flashy and all sorts of stuff, you know. So it's super fun and it's totally doable. Any of you guys can be working in games. I was talking to people, your lovely teachers beforehand, and like there's so many jobs in video games that aren't necessarily drawing. You don't have to draw. They all need, you know, people to help, even though not that you need to become like lawyers or accountants or all sorts of jobs, you know, because these companies are like several thousand people and they're not all artists. So there's many other ways you can get into games because they're just big companies. So working on video games is super fun and Fortnite's a super fun game. So yes.
I love it. Okay, well, nobody picked up one question that I had, so I'm going to ask it.
All right.
And that is about I heard or I saw on your website that you worked on the movie Robots, and I'm curious, like, tell me, I want to know what it's like to work on a movie. I mean, it just seems like it would be a lot. Like, how many people is that, and how long does it take? And
I mean, any animated movie, I worked on the movie Robots, which might be too old for you guys. I don't know, but like I was there for a year and they'd already been working on it for 2 or 3 years before I kind of got on it. And so it's a mighty long process, you know, animation takes a while. And I was just writing like storyboards and coming up with jokes. And so I came in, the movie has Robin Williams. If any of you, I know all the teachers know who Robin Williams is, but the students, I was brought in because the movie needed more visual gags, like it wasn't funny enough. And so they brought me in just purely to write like gags and jokes. And so they would give me a sequence that was already kind of storyboarded and kind of done. And they were like, make this funnier. And so I would just sit around and come up with kind of like jokes all day. And then the director would come over, like we'd have I'd work all week on doing a ton of drawings, come up with jokes, and I have to draw them in like storyboard panels. And then the director would come over like once a week, and then we'd all gather the storyboard crew. There's like 10 or 12 of us in one room, and we would all like pitch our ideas. And the director would say like, yes, no, yes, no. Most of it was no. And then once in a while, one would make it through, and I got like a couple in the movie. So, you know, it's fun. I like working on movies. It's fun. It's you know, working at big companies where everyone's kind of being creative and having a good time is fun. It's still work, right? You're still going in from, you know, 9 to 6 every day, and drawing all day is definitely work, but it's fun work, you know. But I think lots of jobs can be fun. Like I enjoy teaching also. So, you know, so it's fun. It's a big organization. I don't think a lot of people know how big like Disney and Pixar. I mean, most full-length animated movies take around like 400 people, and it takes like about 4 years. So
I can't imagine.
It's a big process. And
it's like your entire high school working for 4 years to make
so I'll tell you one thing that is interesting that you all understand, that one of the real tricky parts of working on a movie that's supposed to be funny is remembering the first time you saw the joke. Because I saw the joke I wrote like good 200 times before it ever, you know, like we'd watch it like again and again in the sequence, just over like a year. I saw it like a ton. And so it's about remembering that it's funny the first time, because it's not funny after you've heard a joke 200 times, right? You're like, oh, I've heard that joke before. You can lose contact with the funniness. So it's like you have to really like center yourself and be like, oh, that was funny the first time I saw it. That means the crowd will think it's funny when they see it, because I'll become immune to it.
Okay, I have a question for you from Natalie, switching gears a little bit.
That's fine.
Natalie, do you want to ask your question, Natalie, about being a writer? Because he's also an author.
Okay. I actually have two questions for you. I'm gonna
Right.
start with the first one. What inspired you to become a writer even though you struggle with dyslexia? Like you struggled with dyslexia like growing up. That's what all of us have done. So I'm curious how that struggle turned into motivation to become a lifelong career.
Yeah. All right. Great. That is a mighty great question. The reality is, I really like telling stories, and I liked coming up with stories. And I'll tell this story now. I got around high school, I stopped caring about my misspelling, even though I struggled with it when I was younger. Around high school, I kind of realized there was a lot of other people that could correct my spelling, and I had other skills. And so I decided not to care about I care about my spelling, but not focus on it and bring me down. And so I just really like storytelling. And you guys know, your teachers, your friends, your moms, someone in your family, they all know how to spell check everything. So I gave up worrying about that, especially now with Chat GDP or anything. It can correct your spelling. I just like telling stories. As you can hear, I like telling stories all the time. So to answer your question, I guess I didn't really use it as motivation so much as I just like telling stories, and I didn't let my dyslexia get in my way, because it was just a matter of spelling. And I realized it seems a little weird that I got into writing because I'm dyslexic, but since the older I get, I realize dyslexia is just, not being able to take in the information correctly. That doesn't stop my brain from coming up with ideas. And I think that I don't know how much science you've read on dyslexia, but I've been reading up on it. And since we're dyslexic, we actually have different brains, right? The way we process information is different. And I think that makes us that's like a secret superpower. So whether it's writing or drawing or whatever you're into, you are processing problems differently than other people. And so your story may be dynamic. Tom Cruise is dyslexic. I don't know who all dyslexic. There's tons of famous people that are dyslexic, and they're just using that in a different way. So, like I said, I just stopped worrying about my misspelling and just let other people handle that. And for books specifically, so many people have to read your book before it goes to print. It's like I read it, my friends read it, my wife reads it, my editors read it, they read it again and they read it again, and then the spell checker looks at it. In general, nothing's getting through that. So even if I have a couple theirs and thems, someone else will find it.
Okay, before you ask your next question, Natalie, which is a great question, Ryan, I wonder if you might focus your screen on drawing now.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
We were practicing this the other day, and he is able to show us as he draws. Now you're a little bit blurry still.
Yeah, it just takes a second. This camera, because my blur is on.
Yeah. But while you're unblurring, maybe Natalie can ask you this next question.
All right, let's do it.
Okay. See if I can find it. Okay.
And maybe you can partially draw your answer to this. He's so good at this, you guys. It's very cool.
It's kind of a long question, so brace yourself.
I'm ready. I'm braced.
I said, was there a certain person or figure who led you to become who you are today, specifically giving you hope or building you up through the process of dyslexia?
There is, but so I went to a private school for 2 years, and it was in the 80s, right? So we all had crazy haircuts, and I don't know if I can really draw this guy, but there was a guy called Bruce Bennett who was like a photographer, and he kind of at our school, I'll zoom in a little bit. Our school, we had he would like take us to go see like movies and stuff, like outside of the classroom. And I don't know, something about, we had a little bit of that and collars and like, I don't know, he was always taking us out to do fun stuff. And I thought that was really cool. And, you know, being around other people that had learning disabilities. My school wasn't focused on dyslexia. I don't know, I'm going to draw like this SpongeBob just for fun while we're talking. I don't have anything more to draw on that. But like, I would like you know, being around other people and seeing other people struggling with their learning disabilities was really good. I didn't have a specific like dyslexia figure. I just was more like really into like a Jim Henson or Walt Disney or someone, and I kind of just wanted to do that, you know. And so I was just kind of always drawing. And what would happen with me a lot of times after I went back to public school, after I went to the private school for a few years, I learned to just talk to my teachers. I'd go up to my teachers right away and be like, hey, I'm dyslexic. And they'd be like, oh, okay. And then I would ask, and I would do like instead of writing papers, I'd do like illustrations of whatever it was. So, so I don't know, I guess for me, it was not focusing on this dyslexia. It was always like, I just wanted to kind of keep drawing and stuff. And so I just was always drawing and telling stories, like doing comics. You know, that was more, I joined like the school poetry and I did comics for the school newspaper kind of business. So it was some of
So
all that.
would you say that you, instead of having to necessarily write all the papers in high school, are you saying that you sort of convinced them to let you express yourself through your art sometimes?
Yeah, totally. I remember real specifically, I was able to like write a paper on like Greek gods instead of, or I did a drawing of all the Greek god stories we'd kind of been studying. I did like a huge image. And then I think I had to get up in front of the class and like describe my image, you know, but I was doing that quite a bit by my senior year in high school because it was just Thor. That's the so yeah,
Okay.
I was doing that.
I have another really great question that is from someone who registered for the call.
Okay.
So I don't know, and I'm hoping this person is on here. The question is a very good one. It says, what advice do you have for elementary teachers that may have helped, that may, let's see, it's worded strangely,
Yeah.
that may have helped any of them help you? In other words, I think what this person is saying is, what would you say to an elementary school teacher? You know, how can they help dyslexic kids?
I mean, I think I don't know if I have like a specific, I mean, I guess you guys are so much more identifying stuff. This is me when I was in kindergarten. People these days are so much better at identifying it earlier than even when I got identified. So I don't really know.
How old were you?
I think I was like 8 or so. So I'd already been in the school system for like a moment. And I don't know. I mean, I think with young kids specifically, I think it's just encouraging them in whatever they're kind of into. And kindergarten these days becomes so much about like I think kindergarten's lost some of the play aspect. And I think letting kids play and kind of discover things that they're into, I think is key. But yeah, that's tough because I don't know when do they identify kids these days to be dyslexic? When is that kind of happening?
It happens at all different times, but
Yeah.
kind of the more aware, well, there's a lot of dynamics at play. Sometimes, you know, if you're in a private school, they can kind of identify it a little bit more readily. If you're in a public school, sometimes, not all, but some public school teachers, you know, are told, don't identify anything, and that's never good. But what's really neat, and you may not realize this, is that in Georgia, I love that picture of you. There are new laws for Georgia that say that all kindergarten, first and second grade students have to be screened for dyslexia.
No, that's
And
cool.
so, yeah, it's going to be really great. It starts in next year, 2024.
Okay.
It's Cookie Monster. I can see him already. Natalie, your hand is raised. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I would also like to point out it does also depend on like the state you're in,
Mhm.
and what kind of school district you're in, because it definitely varies based on that, because like currently I'm in a different state and it's a whole different ball game. Like they're a dyslexia aware state, and so like that's what we're all transferring into, and that's what it's all like. That's what we're trying to get everything to be.
I can totally do that because all my experience was in New York State. I grew up like upstate, up near Rochester and stuff. So yeah, it's different than whatever's down here. So yeah, every state has its own deal.
Own laws, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. If you guys have a question, by the way, the way you can raise your hand, I don't know if you saw what Natalie did, but on the bottom of your screen, there's something called reactions. And one of the things you can do is raise and lower your hand there. So if you do that, I can definitely call on you. Let's see, I have some more questions here. What strengths do you think being dyslexic gave you? I know you said you started out not so much feeling like it was a strength, but then as you got older, you realized it was. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. Oh, tell me the first part of the question again. Sorry, I
What,
focused on
tell tell me about what strengths you feel like dyslexia gave you.
Okay, I'm going to switch my camera back. Oh, hold on. It comes back in 1 second here. That's all my streaming stuff is overriding my Zoom stuff. All right, there we go.
There you are.
There you go. The strength, I mean, I think the more I've kind of gotten into it, I do find that just like it's the different kinds of problem solving, I think, is the real kicker. Because I mean, all jobs, whether it's video games or books or whatever, really just becomes about, coming up with different solutions to the problem, whatever the job is. And so that, and I mean, the only other strength I think really is, I guess really don't care about spelling anymore. Like whether that's a good or bad, I guess don't care. Like I guess we have so many computers that can do all this stuff. I realize in school, they're grading you on spelling and stuff, and I don't know what AI you're allowed to use. But me as a adult working all over the place, I just tell people when I get hired for jobs on movies, I'm like, I'm dyslexic, stuff's going to be misspelled. If that's going to be a problem, just let me know. But normally they don't care because most jobs I'm communicating to everybody just like kind of like in like a chat, right? So like it's just, chats are misspelled all over the place and just all that. So there you go. There's two things, I guess.
I love that. Okay, Bess has her hand up. Go for it, Bess.
I had a question that pertains to writing. So at my school, I'm in a dramatic writing class, and we're about to start writing like 10-minute skits. And so I was wondering if you had advice on like what you do like when writing, when you get like stuck on like something, like when something isn't working plot wise.
Yes, I do have answers for that. Great question. I have multiple tricks. When I'm stuck, you like as in like you have something, you're just kind of stuck on like a scene or what, like a specific lines or whatever. My number one trick is to watch a bunch of movies or TV shows or YouTube skits, whatever it is that's in the same kind of vein as you're doing. And one piece of advice I learned from a friend a long time ago, I forget which movie director it is, a big movie director like Michael Bay, the guy that does Transformers and stuff. When he starts making a movie, let's say he's making like a romantic comedy, he then goes to all of his favorite romantic comedy movies and pulls out the scenes that he likes the most. And he edits it together into like a movie that doesn't make any sense, right? Like all of his favorite scenes. But then he thinks about what his character is, and then he projects his character into that scene and says, oh, instead of, whoever reacting this way, my character will react like this. And then that just all of a sudden just generates more stuff for you real quickly. So that's one way. The other way, similar, is just to like watch stuff that's similar and like take stuff from it. There's nothing wrong as long as you're not like copying like 100%. but use your own language, or kind of borrow or take from other things that are similar. And if you're really stuck, I will say this: I find ChatGPT great for coming up with really quick ideas and be like, hey, my character is supposed to enter the room, give me 10 funny ways that she can enter the room, whatever. And so those are 3 ways. Or like, I think that should work. Or get your friends, if you're writing with friends or if you're working with a group, ask other people and kind of brainstorm in a circle. Be like, hey, I don't feel this part's working the best. Like, you guys have any ideas? And then someone will say something, and then I just try to keep that kind of going, because the more people that have ideas, the better. It just kind of something pops out.
I love how you said you use ChatGPT, because it really is going to be interesting to see how AI impacts all of our lives. But what's interesting about what you said is it's not doing it for you. It's just giving you an idea or a first draft or whatever. You still have to use your brain, your creative brain, to make that wonderful. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay. I have another question for you. This is one of the ones that we had beforehand. So I'll go ahead and read it.
Yeah.
Tell us about what you did right after high school. Did you go straight to design school or to college, or what was your path?
So right after high school, I knew right away I was going to like an art college. I didn't know which one, but I knew that was my path. I was lucky in that my dad taught industrial design, which is designing like vacuum cleaners and stuff. So he knew about art schools and stuff. And I just started applying with my portfolio that I'd made in high school. And I got into a school called Ringling School of Art and Design, like the circus. And it's down in Florida, and it was founded many years ago by John Ringling, the guy that started the circus. He had like a niece that wanted to do art school, so he built an art school with his fabulous wealth. And but now it's a really big animation school. And I went down there, I applied and got into that, and I went in for illustration. So I was in for illustration. So animation wasn't as much of a thing. I mean, it was, but it wasn't as acknowledged as it is today. And so I went in for illustration and did 4 years. I almost dropped out my junior year because I wanted to just get work in, and I wanted to maybe switch into like sculpture, because I was doing a lot of puppetry work at that place. And then when I looked into the other schools, I was going to have to like start my freshman year again. And I was like, I just want to get out of school. So I stayed in and got my degree. And all during the summers, though, I was doing puppet work or writing books or that kind of stuff. And then how did that work? And then I kind of did that right after, where did that go? I did that through college. And then right after college, my roommate got a job at a big animation company. And then he got me the job. But no, I went down there for a puppet show. Sorry. He got a job in Texas, and I was doing puppets. And he's like, I got this big gig to do puppets. So I went down there. And then while I was down there, the animation company he was working for got a job working. We were going to do videos for Chuck E. Cheese. And therefore that counted as puppetry. And so I got in like directing people in Chuck E. Cheese costumes for a while.
You know what's so interesting about that is you're talking about your friends, and your friend did one thing and that inspired you to do another thing. And then you hooked up and did something with him or her or whatever. And I think that that's such a big part of your adult life. Everybody's adult life is to have all those connections with people that we're friends with, and they influence us over time. So I love that.
Yeah, totally. I will say probably 75% of all jobs I've gotten have been through friends or a connection somehow. Just because people end up, I got lucky. My group kind of went on and became successful, like my people I live with in college. So that makes life a little easier if you get in with a good crowd. Like one of my roommates won an Oscar for animation. One other one like was directing movies. Like, so, it works out. I got lucky though.
So don't hang out with people who aren't doing productive things, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, well, I get as long as you're into doing productive. Yeah, all of us in college, we got together because we were always like doing side projects in addition to our homework. I mean, I did nothing but like draw or build puppets in college ever. So
I have a question. I keep thinking about that puppetry that you're talking about
Yeah.
and building puppets, doing like I can't I remember when I was little, I went to some little puppet show, and so in my mind I'm thinking about that kind of puppet. Can you tell us a little bit more about puppetry? What is that all?
yeah, well, I was not doing that little tiny stuff. I do like big, huge, monstrous stuff. Like we built a dog, and there were like 4 people working it inside of it. I built like 20-foot toy soldiers. I ended up doing a lot of Christmas stuff. And then when I was working at an animation studio, I was down in Dallas, and we got connected with the Fort Worth Zoo. And then every Halloween and Christmas, we were doing like month-long residencies at the zoo. After work, I'd go to work, and then I'd do this on the side. We just like build crazy animal puppet shows, but everything's big. I do blacklight, which is where like we're dressed all in black, and the puppets are painted into fluorescent paints. So I mean, everything was like the size of me or radically larger. We do like life-size giraffe necks that would come down on booms and all sorts of craziness. And yeah, we did that. Puppetry is really tough to make money in. Like, it's really hard. I like it because I like building stuff, but there's cool stories you can do with it, lots of writing and experimental theater stuff. It's just tough to make ends meet because there's no like gig doing that. There's no like even my friends that work at Sesame Street, working at Sesame Street is like a part-time job because they only shoot for like 3 months out of the year, and then the rest of the time you're kind of free. So it's like, it's not. But I like, once again, it all goes back to storytelling or making stuff, whether I'm making it with my hands or I'm drawing or programming games, whatever. I just like the storytelling aspect of all that kind of stuff. So
is that typical of a lot of artists because you've had so many different segments of your career, whether it's the movies or the books or the comics or the puppets, or is that typical?
No, I seem to be a little extra crazy. I seem to like to get really far in one thing and then totally switch gears for some reason. I don't know what that is in myself. I think what happens to me is I get really far, and then I realize I don't actually want to do that to the next phase. Like, I got puppetry like really far. We got to the point we were starting to tour with a puppet show we made. And I was like, I really don't like touring because it's just like every night you're somewhere else. You're just on the road 24/7. You don't feel like connected to anything because you're just gone all the time. I didn't like that at all. And so that was a lesson, because I'm kind of more like a homebody actually. And so that was no good. And then I was working in commercials, and I worked on like Chuck E. Cheese. I worked with like Michael Jackson on a commercial. I was doing commercials. And then I got to the top of that where I was, and I was like, I really don't want to be like working on JCPenney's commercials anymore. Like, it just lost the fun. And I was wanting to work in animation. So I just went over and started working in animation. Not just went over, it was a clunky transition. And yeah, I think a lot of people tend to do like one thing would be easier, but you could really focus down on it a little bit more.
Might be easier, but maybe not quite as interesting.
Yeah, it just depends on what you like to do as a person. I think everyone's journey is just like, what do they like? Do they like video games? Work on video games. You like writing? Work on writing. You like theater? Go for it. It just is like, especially when you're young, that's your opportunity to really, because you can survive. You can live with like 4 roommates. You can eat ramen as food. Your bar for life is real low. Your body is in great shape. You can kind of do whatever. And so I think going for the passion, I think, is the correct move for anybody.
So, okay, I have a question about that. Well, I have a question.
Hmm?
What would you, if you could go back to your 2nd grade self, what would you say to that 2nd grade 7-year-old self?
I would say stop crying about failing spelling tests and just get on with it. And then in the future, it doesn't matter. The other thing, I had really bad acne when I was a teenager, but I was eating like pepperoni pizza like as much as I possibly could. So I would go back to myself and be like, stop eating all the pep. Now if I eat one piece of pepperoni, I get like a whitehead within like 30 minutes of that. So I'm like, cut that out right away, quick.
Don't you think it's funny how you can look back on that and it was such a big deal at the time, but not so much. It's like, whatever, just isn't as big a
Well,
deal.
I mean, I think it's also because, I mean, you all are still within like the school system. And so the school system is life, right? Like, and you want to do good, that's your world 100%. It's just school, and you want to do well for your future because everyone's like, it's your future, or like your parents are leaning on you, whatever it is. It's like, yes, it is, but like the world is much broader and it's not as focused on spelling as a general, like everyday kind of thing, like, yes, it is. And yes, you need to know math, but like, it's not the end of the world if you misspell something. Maybe if you're like a high-end lawyer, it's a problem, but like, writing books or whatever, as I said, so many people are going to spell check it and go over it that, and also when I was younger, we didn't have the technology, right? Like, I mean, I was writing papers on a typewriter. So an error was really problematic, right? But as soon as my parents were cool, and as soon as like the first Macs came out, those little square, like rectangle Macs, they got me a Mac for word processing so I could like change it, right? Which was a huge deal. And so I was one of the only kids in my school that was handing in like printed papers because everyone else was like handwriting it or typing it still at the time.
But I bet that was a real help.
Oh, totally changed my life because I could actually like go, my parents could read it and check it at home, right? Instead of just like a free for all with the teacher, So yeah, it was nice.
No kidding. Okay, another question. And maybe you feel like you've answered this, I'm not sure. How do you get inspiration for creating a new character?
Oh, that's easy. I come up with new characters like all the time. For me, new characters are really about like almost like a funny perspective on life, like I don't know how to describe that. More like I find stories to be just like little moments in time or little opinion you have about whatever is happening to you. And so I just like creating new characters and put them in stories that normally I find I have to put characters in situations that annoy them. And then that's kind of where the where the stuff comes out of. But you can respond to it being funny or serious or whatever. Or I'm really into not having to create stuff 100% original. And so if I see a movie or a TV show or a YouTube skit that's kind of funny, I'm like, oh, I like that, but I want to twist it into my own thing. I find that to be pretty easy. So then I get to draw and, do whatever around that.
Do you ever take these characters from real life people?
Yeah, once in a while, well, because a lot of times if I'm pulling them, like I was doing it a little more in New York City because you're kind of out and you see tons of crazy people in New York. And but you just pull that one moment, you don't really know their whole life story, but you're like, oh, like the other day I was driving, even though I'm bald, I'm not driving a convertible, and I was driving around here. I'm up in Alpharetta, and some older guy had like a comb over, but the comb over was like blowing up in the wind and like doing all this kind of dancing up in the air. And I was like, that's amazing. Like there's something, his comb over is coming alive or something. I don't know what that would be,
It could be a character in itself.
Yeah, it's character into itself, I don't know. There's stuff all over the place. It's just, I find it's a matter of connecting it to a story that you feel whoever the person is connected to a story that's real to you, whatever that is, an experience in high school, a problem with a friend, teacher, or whatever, then you just sorry, I'm going to say one thing that I have not said this whole time about writing. I find for writing, I have to write I write the same scene like 6, 7, 10 times without worrying about it. And then I'll pick the one that seems the best in the moment. Instead of like a lot of people just like, some writers like, they just kind of like write in one shot. And I'm like, I'll do it like 3 or 4 times and then I'll pick the one that feels better, or I'll mush them together, whatever that is. That's the same thing with my drawing. I'll do a lot of drawing. Instead of me like being real gentle with one line at a time, I'll just bust through it like 7 or 10 times and then pick the one that felt the best.
So do you feel like you have to have patience to do that? Because to me, that would, it feels like it would require patience, or do you feel like that's just part of the fun, creative part of it?
I'd say it's different for everybody. Most of my friends that are artists like to work slowly, and that is where their energy is, I guess I would say. For me, that drives me totally nuts. And so I'm personally about the speed. And that's more relaxing to me than noodling it. When I noodle it, I get frustrated and bored quickly. And so my style is just, oh, am I still here?
Yes. Well, you're a little bit frozen, but we can hear you.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So it just depends on what your style is. Different, everyone's got their own thing. So whatever you have to find, you find it over time. I discovered that in college because all my roommates would spend like 20 hours doing one little drawing, and I did it in like 5 minutes. Great, it looked totally different. I'm not,
Yeah.
there's not good or bad, just like that's what mine is. And I just went with it once again.
Okay, we have another question. Lindsay Stewart had a question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you've talked about your journey in school with spelling and with writing. I was just curious about your experience with reading. Did some point the switch flip and you started enjoying that based on what you were reading?
Yes, totally. So my mom taught kindergarten and my dad taught college. So my mom was the one that was kind of aware of dyslexia, kind of what it was. And so she got me, since I was drawing all the time, she actually started buying me like comics when I was younger, but like Archie or Casper back in the day. And so we would read the comics together. And that's where I kind of started to start reading a little more fluently, because I could kind of match the picture with the words. And then in the private school, also, they were doing the stuff where I had like a big old tape recorder, but it had like a speed control on the tape recorder. And so I started reading like the Lord of the Rings books, or like what's that space comedy space books? Why am I totally blanking on the name? Like So Long, Thanks for All the Fish, kind of Monty Python. What's that? The like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Like I started reading that kind of stuff. Just finding the material that I was interested in versus the school assigned books, right? And so finding that, but mainly it was comics was the big one. And then I got into reading because I really like the storytelling, and once you kind of get past, and I would listen to a lot of audiobooks, but back in the day that'd be like cassettes versus what is available now. And I really remember like, because what my school would have me do is I'd really have to like listen to the audiobook, and then I'd have to like follow along with my finger like on the page. So I was really kind of seeing it. And so, yeah, reading, I don't ever remember not liking reading. It just was, must have been really difficult, so I didn't do it. But once I kind of connected to like comics, or I'd be excited today because of all the like graphic novels and all that stuff that's out there, it was not really around when I was a kid. I was reading a lot of like, there's old comics from France called like Asterix or Tintin, that kind of stuff, because it was translated. I wasn't reading in French. I was failing Spanish like all over the place. And so, so anything like that was really useful for me. And then I was probably reading books by myself, like in high school. I think was where I was able to just pick up a book and kind of do it,
And what about now? What kind of books do you like to read now?
I still really just read kind of like fantasy adventure kind of stuff. I need kind of page turners to kind of stay involved.
Mhm.
I always am reading. I'll read like 3 or 4 at once. But some of those are like really, I have a really hard time. I just get bored reading like books on entrepreneurizing or business, or like just like educational kind of data books are really boring but good. But what I really just read is like, I like reading like really modern sci-fi kind of page turner kind of stuff is kind of what I would read, even though my video froze, regularly. So that's kind of
That's
what
okay. Even when your video freezes, we can still hear you, so it's working out.
So yeah, I read that mostly.
Fantastic.
Hey,
Okay,
I remember.
Sorry, Bess has her hand up real
Oh,
quick.
gotcha.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I was wondering what one of your favorite projects that you've worked on was.
Man, I really loved work. Well, of course, I love my own books because they were like a journey. But the books can be hard sometimes when it doesn't sell well. It starts to like twist your version of it, even though I had a lot of fun making them. Probably my favorite. I liked working on the movie Robots because it was cool to work with all these super hyper creative people. You know, I got to work with people that worked on like Iron Giant and Ren and Stimpy and all those kind of people. Just to hang out with those people is amazing. I really loved, I did a bunch of Cookie Monster shorts, which was super amazing. And they were really fun because I was drawing Cookie Monster. I kind of got to help write them. I'll say write them because they were like wordless, kind of slapsticky kind of stuff. And I always loved slapstick stuff. So working with Cookie Monster voice talent was super cool. I say almost all the projects I normally like in the moment. And then, you know, once it's kind of over, then it's kind of over, then you move on to the next thing. But probably the Cookie Monster stuff, or I did a series of like doodle activity books I really loved, like a spooky Halloween one was super fun. You know, I've kind of enjoyed them all in different phases of it all.
What were you going to say, Emery?
Oh, it was back when you mentioned something about Spanish, taking Spanish in high school and how you hated it or you were failing it. And I know a lot of the kids probably have that experience with foreign language, about not loving it. So I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your experience.
Man, it was brutal. I think that was the one class I wouldn't cry in class, but I'd cry at home like all the time because it would just be like I just get like F's or beyond. If there was anything lower than the F, I think I would get it. And then I tried German, which was equally as awful. But I was super lucky. This does not happen to everybody, but like my mom, this was in high school. I didn't have foreign language in middle school because I was in the private school. My mom went into the school district and actually I stopped taking the foreign language class because it was destroying my ego into like a puddle. And so I was in most of the people from my high school go to like Harvard or Yale. I was in like a big money kind of community on the edge of it. And so the guidance counselors were all like, you need to take foreign language because you might want that in the future. And I was like, if I want that, I'll learn it then. And so what happened, once again, I know I got lucky because of my mom, but I was able to drop foreign language somehow. And then I ended up taking, since I couldn't just be like wandering the halls, I took like a second art class. So I had like normal art class, then I was taking like pottery or photography. So I'd stopped taking foreign language by like my junior year in high school. Like I didn't take it my junior year. So that was amazing. You know, I don't know how my mom fought that. I should ask her what she had. I know she had to go before the school board and all this kind of stuff, but my parents believed that it was more about keeping my ego intact than passing Spanish, you know.
So I have a question. You keep referring to your parents, your mom, and it sounds like they did a lot of things right.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky. My mom taught kindergarten, so she was super aware of education and all that stuff. And my dad had come from a not the best upbringing kind of scenario, kind of country life kind of thing. And my dad was a designer, so he kind of like left the farm and went and, you know, started doing design work for big companies like Kodak and stuff. And so I think they were very progressive for the time period. And yeah, my mom kind of knew what within the school system, and she knew you could, as a parent, she knew you could push the school system. I don't think a lot of parents know that they can go in and actually, I think they feel as though the school system's just like this institution and it is what it is, when in fact you can go in and like, you know, plead cases and manipulate it to be more correct for the kid. Because I think everyone needs to, I agree. I think keeping your ego up as a teenager is most difficult. And I think with all art, I think that's whatever, or anything in your career, I think having someone shoot you down, especially in your teenager's years, can totally like crush it hard. And so, you know, it's about ignoring that and just kind of, even though it's tough to ignore, I know, but, you know, I think if you're enjoying it within yourself, you're going to have to just, you know, let it let those people go, whatever that comment is. It comes your whole life. I mean, I still get people being like, what do you do again? You know, like most of some family or relatives, I don't think have any clue what I do. You know, they have no concept, you know, of what it is.
I love it.
You know.
Well, let's see. I've got 7:53. What other are there any other burning questions out there for Ryan? This has been so helpful, so interesting.
Good. Well, and also I'll be around at the Dyslexia Run, and if anyone wants to reach out to me, you can grab emails or on the social media stuff. I'm mostly on YouTube. I'm not on Instagram a lot. Or Facebook. You can reach out and friend me, whatever. I'm open to talking and helping everybody because I know it's a struggle. You know, being a teenager is a struggle just unto itself, and then having, you know, dyslexia on top is a party, but it's good.
Yeah, I would say, I would add that I don't think anybody, you know, if you ask adults, hey, would you go back to middle school or even high school? You know, like nobody would do that. I mean, life is so much better afterwards. Natalie has her hand raised. Go ahead, Natalie.
I was gonna ask you, what do you think was the most like difficult dyslexia-wise time in your life?
I think it was probably like in that probably before. So I went to a private school, a school focused on learning disabilities for like the last 2 years of middle school. So I was in public school for the first 2 years and private school for the last 2 years, and then went back to high school for all of high school. So it was right before I went into the private school because that's when I was really failing Spanish hard, and all that kind of stuff was really hard. And then I went into the private school, or the school for learning disabilities. And then after that, I learned to just go up and talk to my teachers right away in high school and be like, yo, I'm dyslexic. I'm going to be like doodling the whole class, but I'm totally paying attention, you know? And so, I mean, it was still hard because, you know, I don't like, you know, you don't like, I mean, I can sit there and people can, you know, give me grades on my spelling is always hard. Even now when someone is like, hey, if I post something on social and someone always has to say like, hey, you misspelled whatever. I'm like, whatever, but you know, it still hurts a little bit. So, you know, probably middle school was probably the roughest. High school, by that point, I'd kind of just become like artist person in like, you know, but I was still part of like the poetry magazine and stuff. So I don't know. I kind of found a little group of friends that were all in my zone, whatever that is, you know.
I think it says a lot about somebody who feels the need to correct your spelling on Facebook. So it says a lot more about them than about you.
I actually agree with that, but it still kind of like hurts when you send out like a newsletter or something and someone's like, hey, you know, and it's like, come on.
We gotta let that go, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Okay, well, I have 7:56, so I think we have taken so much of your time, and this has been really, really helpful. And it's so interesting. I know it's a peek into a world that most of us don't know anything about. I don't anyway, so I think it's very fascinating.
Yeah.
And I guess just in wrapping up, don't forget, we've got Dyslexia Dash coming up October 21st, and so fun, and Ryan will be there, and
yeah, come on. I don't know. I have a or something going on there, whatever it is.
a lot of the faces on this call probably be there, so all good.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just want to say thank you so much, and you're getting a lot of thank yous in the chat. So really appreciate you helping and reaching out to help others, because it makes a big difference to see someone who's been there, done that, and look how successful they are, you know. Awesome.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, just all keep going ahead. You're all doing great. I'm sure of it. You know, you're doing the best you can, and that's all you can do. So just keep plowing ahead, and you know, you'll get it sorted. And you have great teachers, so you know it's all good. So
it all works out, right?
Yeah, it does. I hate always saying that because it's cheesy, because it doesn't help you in the moment, you know, but like it does in the long run. And you know, I always say just try to stay true to yourself. If it feels wrong to you, it's wrong. If it feels right, it feels right. You know, whatever that is, and you just gotta let it go, I guess, just like Frozen.
Speaking of animation.
Yeah, speaking of
All
animation.
right. On that fabulous note, thank you. And I think we will conclude the evening.
All right, thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
I froze up at
Thank
the end,
you.
of course.
Yeah.
right.
But you know what? We're going to let that go.
All right, bye, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Bye.
Bye.